Alright, welcome back everyone to Jface Games. In the last video I was talking about creating a new game. Since I'm on hold on my current game as it's at the publisher / editor, it's got to get reworked a little bit. And so in the meantime, I'm working on a new game. And so I have a couple things to talk about here. So let me see where I should best start. You know what the best thing to do? Look at the character sheet. So I started mapping out a little bit of a character sheet, and you can see it here. Now, the idea here is that this is using a dice pool system, okay? There's a lot here. There's a lot here to take in. So let's follow the arrow. Let's start over here. So these are your abilities, or your attributes, and you're going to have a certain amount of these checked, and that means how many dice you're going to be rolling, and you're going to have a pool of dice that you're going to utilize. Now, this is going to be, I showed this in a live stream recently with some other people, using what I refer to as the pressure pool system, right? And so it's a play on the pressure system I had previously, but it's using a dice pool. And so the way that works is, let me go ahead and show you, boop. Let me pop over here real quick. The way that would work is that you would have these dice. I'll center this a little bit. And say these are my attributes here. Whoops. The attributes are the blue ones. The pressure is the D8. I would roll these. And the number of hits I have is how many of these beat this dice, tie or beat it, or how many of these can add up to it. So right now you have a 6 and a 6, so I get 1 success. This would equal 5 if I did add them together, so it's still just 1 success. Right? If I roll this, here you have 2 successes because you have 2 different ways you could hit 7, and it's pretty quick to add up. You know, it's all quick math, right? That's the hope. And then here is another option. Here's 1 success because you got this one that could reach 8, but then that can't. And you can have, if this gets low, so let's just, whoops, if this were to roll pretty low like that, there's a 4 success, which is a pretty big deal, right? So you're using this dice pool system. Coined currently the pressure pool system. Oh no, don't move that. Move this. And so that's what these attributes here. You have these attributes. This is going to determine how many die you have. Now, the other thing you're looking at here is there's a meta currency. And the meta currency is this stamina up here. And depending on your class, you're going to have a certain amount of stamina you start with, and a certain amount of adrenaline you start with, and a certain amount of mana. But what happens is that on your turn, the beginning of your turn, you can turn 1 stamina into either an adrenaline or a mana. And then anytime you use any of these 3, they become fatigue, right? They just go down here. And what these are, they're dice. So you have dice sitting outside the character sheet. So maybe I've got like 4d6 here, 1d6 here, 2d6 here, depending on the class I am. I don't know. And so then what happens is as I spend them, they go down to fatigue. Now, what else do we have here? That's the main meta currency that's going to power abilities. You have, right now I have these 8 actions in the game, which are supposed to be sort of like your all-encompassing actions. I was just telling someone they're not the basic actions, they're your base actions, because the way I envision this is to look a little bit like 5 Torches Deep, where there are 4 different versions of this character sheet, one for the warrior, the thief, the zealot, and the mage. And then, if this is the warrior one, over here is going to be a list of powers, or abilities, or features, whatever you want to call it. And in essence, there should be 24, so they should be really short, like 1 lines. And the reason I say 24 is because for each of these base actions, there should be 3 different sort of passive bonuses, or even not if passive bonuses, variations of this action, right? What does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and go over here real quick. And if I go to the warrior, for instance, and we've got some other stuff up here we'll talk about in a second, but like here's Clash, and I haven't got it fully flushed out because I'm just thinking about it. So with the warrior, technically you're looking at something like a barbarian, a fighter, and a ranger. That's how 5 Torches Deep does it. So those are sort of the variations of these melee classes. And so you have this class, which is a tactical strike, which is it costs you 1 stamina to use, but you get to choose what stance you're in. We'll talk about that in a second. very tactical. You have the reckless attack, which costs 1 adrenaline, but you get 1 extra success. So you get an automatic success. As long as you hit once, you get a second success. So I showed you how that dice pool worked. And sometimes it can be hard to get 2 successes, let alone 3 or 4. This gives you an extra one right off the bat, right? And then there's going to be some sort of cunning attack, which I don't know what that does yet. And then you can see each one of these things. So if I talk about these base abilities real quick, let's look at these base abilities. You have Clash, which is forceful, right? So it has a stance associated with it. So let's talk about stances real quick. Up here in the top right, if you watched my last video, up here in the top right, you have stances and then you have defenses, right? And what this means is that there are stances, and this is a little cheat sheet, that sort of paper, rock, scissor, right? Forceful is going to beat cunning. Cunning is going to beat measured. Measured is going to beat forceful. And 2 forcefuls just equal like a neutral, right? 0. And so what happens is if the monster and you are in different stances, so if I did a clash, if I'm doing an attack, so I'm being forceful, which is clash is like your basic attack. If I'm being forceful and the monster happens to be measured, that means I'm going to get -1 defense. And then down here are other stats that would be hardwired for my character in terms of impact, energy, and will. And these might have numbers from like 1, 0, and 2, right? So now you have a scenario where maybe I roll, or maybe I did forceful and they were measured, so I get a -1, and my impact is 2, so now I've got a 1 defense for that, right? Now I haven't finalized what I want damage to be necessary in this. I don't know if you're going to be rolling for damage or using that bag of wounds concept I came out with 2 videos ago, where in essence, depending on, you want this number to be a mitigator, right? So whatever this number is going to be subtracted from whatever the monster's attack does. So the monster's attack might be like a 2 draw attack, meaning you draw 2 tokens from the bag. But if my defense, because I called the right defense, I was forceful, they were cunning, and on top of that, I've got 1 impact, so now I'm at 2, I don't draw anything from the bag. Whereas if I was below whatever the monster's attack was because I made the wrong calls, or it's just a really powerful attack, then I might have to draw 2 or 3 from the tokens from the bag, which could be a problem. All right, so that's one way of doing damage. The other way of damage is, this is very similar to the pressure system in Scattered Isles, where whenever you take hits, you have to take your stamina, adrenaline, or mana, and you've got to move it down to your fatigue. You get to choose which one of those. The other idea I have is that everything is, we call them all circumstances, right? And then all of a sudden what you do is you have, kind of like with Crown and Skull, everything on your character sheet, powers, actions, maybe numbers of dice, whatever. Like there could be little boxes everywhere, and you're checking them off, meaning you no longer have access to, like, you lose one of your dice. You know you can't guard anymore. You can't do, etc. Which is a death spiral. But I mean, I think Crown and Skull has proven that death spirals can be pretty fun also. So I haven't ironed out exactly what that defense is. I think I'm going to go with the bag draw because I think it's just fun, but we'll get there. All right, let's get back to these actions. So you have Clash, which is a forceful. You're either using might for melee attack or agility for range. I should say agility, not ability. You have Maneuver, which is how you move in the game, right? That is an actual movement, which technically is cunning. Move normally unless you're engaged. If something is engaged with you, then you might have to do something else to get out of there. You have Pressure, which is a forceful stance, but you get to choose an enemy, and that enemy can't use any ranged attacks, and they can't move. So in essence, you're kind of locking them down. Like, you're in front of them. So they can still melee attack, and they can melee attack anybody, right? It's not a taunt. So if there's anyone else around, they can still hit that person. But this is, I'm in their face, and I'm making sure they're not just like shooting arrows at someone else, or they're running away, right? But that's an action, right? So I'm not attacking, technically. Then you have Guard, which is a measured, and it's -1 token on attack. So this would give me, in essence, a +1 to this, right? This whole mini game up here, if you're guarding, you're in measured, and you're getting +1. Coordinate is a cunning. You gain +1 die to grant +1 die to an ally for their next action. So it's, in essence, it's a help action, and you're giving them a die. Observe, which is a measured stance. You learn either a shield value, a death number, or a stance frequency of a monster. So it's a way of figuring out stuff. Like the GM would tell you, hey, this monster is forceful 60% of the time, right? Or in essence, monsters will probably have a tactics chart, and there's probably like 4 or 5. Maybe there's 5 to make it easy math. Where if they have 5 tactics, then it's like if 2 of them are forceful or 3 of them is forceful, and one of you can say, yeah, they're forceful 60% of the time. And so now it goes, okay, everyone, we got to go measured, that kind of thing. You have invoke, which is, and then death number and stance free, or death number and shield value. That's a matter of damage. We don't have to talk about that right now. Invoke, it's measured. This is where you would drink a potion, cast a spell, or activate an item. So this is your engage with some sort of item you have or magic. And then react is your off action. So as long as you haven't taken, this shouldn't say, when attacked, if you haven't acted this turn, you can change your stance immediately, right? So it's a quick change. And you would know what the monster's doing. So it's like the monster is making a forceful attack against you. You haven't gone yet. So you immediately just go, I'm going to react and make myself measured, right? That's what react is. Now, down here it says that you can always subtract a stamina. So you can take one of your stamina and fatigue yourself to perform a maneuver. So this might not just be maneuver. This might be like any second action. So there might be a way of getting two actions. And I think I'm going to make it any action, where it's like -1 stamina to get a second action. That way you can pressure someone and attack them, or you can move and attack. You can move and pressure. You can whatever. You can attack and guard. And what would happen is if you're choosing 2 actions, you get to choose which of the 2 stances you end in, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, so going back to those powers, you can see how if you are a tactician, if you're a fighter, if you're getting more of this sort of tactical, well, normally a clash is a forceful. You can burn 1 stamina, and you could say, I'm doing this tactical strike, and I'm also I'm going to be measured while doing it, right? Something like that. So these are ways of modifying those, and this is just this class. Now, the other things are, I'm trying to kind of get these ideas from, I did a video a little bit back about Avatar, and I liked some ideas. So if you're a warrior, you can figure out what values that you want to have, these contested sort of values. So control versus adaptability, rage versus restraint, solitude versus connection, right? And then here are a bunch of words that could be descriptives of your demeanor, right? Disciplined, calculating, simple, quiet, stoic, So you as a character just takes one of these sort of combos and then 2 of these words, and you end up putting it up here at the top of your screen, on the top of your character sheet. And this ends up being some sort of, I don't know yet, right? I just have it there because I think it looks cool. I don't know what it does to you mechanically, right? That is a future problem. I just like it, so I put it there. So that gives you the basics. Let's browse through here real quick to see if there's anything else that would be... So we had the pressure pool. Oh, I thought about maybe drawing from, or taking some ideas from Draw Steel, in the sense that if you have this pressure pool and it's giving you a number of hits, maybe it's not number of hits, but it's like the power, right? Instead of what they do is, instead of doing a 2d6 system where you roll the 2d6 and you're trying to get like, you have the different ranges of 6 and lower, 7, 9, 10 and up. Maybe it's number of successes. So if you get 4 successes, you get a superpower, and so you might have different abilities that have tiers, and so you're always going to hit with a magic spell, but it has tiers of what it does. We already talked about the bag or the wound bag, but I kind of called it the bag of circumstances in this one instead of bag of wounds, where you're drawing, and what that means is instead of it doing like quote unquote damage, it's potentially a number of effects that you're mitigating on your character sheet. Work in progress. Still thinking about that. We already talked about the warrior and the classes. Each one of these has different sort of, once again, this sort of concept, and I've got some rules or some ideas that I'm kind of playing with. We haven't talked about conditions, but we talked about actions and we talked about defenses. I've kind of started listing out different conditions, right? So here are the different conditions potentially in the game. Let me go ahead and just put it in this view. Whoop. Where you've got vulnerable, protected, inspired, shaken, off balance, focused, empowered, trapped, and weakened. And currently I'm trying to determine if it's all just going to be perfectly thematic in terms of how you get rid of these, or if there's some other sort of action you have to take. So right now you can see I have an effect, right? So if you're vulnerable, you only get token reduction from stances, not from your defenses. So that's brutal, right? If you are vulnerable, what that means is that you just have to guess this correctly because these are all of a sudden all set to 0, right? That's awful. But guess what? You're vulnerable, so it makes sense. So the question is, how do you get rid of it? Well, I know that if you're protected, you get rid of it. The other question is, like, right now I'm thinking about the idea of you have to take certain actions. Like if you take a guard and a maneuver action, then after you've taken both of those, you can get rid of it. That might be a little hefty. Technically, it's just 1 round if you spend a stamina. So we'll see. I'll show another one just because they're fun. Shaken is you can't move stamina into adrenaline or mana, right? So you just can't power up in some sort of way. So that's brutal. I made these pretty bad. I like making it dangerous. You can't take the react action when you're off balance, so you can't use that ability where you can guess the correct or switch stances really quickly. But the good thing is that a lot of the positive ones, they're really fun, right? So like empowered is you gain a +1 die to your might pool, right? That might be boring. I already wrote that might be boring. I thought there were some fun ones that I liked. You gain +2 token reduction for protected. Inspired, either move any resource or disregard next action resource cost. That could be pretty cool. Anyways, so those are the potential conditions. They're probably going to go on the character sheet as well. But once again, if I'm going to put 24 powers or bonuses on the character sheet, I don't know if that's going to happen. There might have to be a sidecar to this. So we will to be determined in that sense. That takes care of stance or statuses and conditions. Distances, don't really know yet. Playing around with it. Character sheet, there's still some things I want to add, right? Add numbers to each of the resources for the base. So this is for like the base classes. So warrior has a different number of stamina, fatigue, adrenaline, etc. Spend 1 stamina maneuver. Already added that, so I can get rid of that. But I got to change that to any action, not just maneuver. Action descriptions, etc., etc. The only thing I have to consider still is this damage tokens. Like, do they do wounds, right? Is there a wounds area? I don't know. And then we already talked about blending actions. So that takes us through what I have so far for this character sheet and for this game. I don't want to talk about monsters yet and damage on the monsters just yet. But that's where it is at the moment. Feel free to hit me up and let me know what you think. Which, just in general, what I would like from those that comment is sort of what jumps out to you as you would love to play with, right? I'm not looking yet for like critiques. I'm not looking yet for, I would do it this way. That stuff I don't care for at the moment. What I want to hear is that is cool to me, right? Lean into this more than that. That would be nice. That's the feedback I'm looking for. Lean more into this, not that, etc. When you said this, I got super pumped. Let's go down that rabbit hole of feedback. All right, y'all. Deuces.